Welcome back to the channel. My name is Crawford. This is Virginia's for Lowriders, and today and this weekend we are knocking out more progress on the Mazda project. Hopefully. That's the plan. Just like every other weekend, we're just gonna let ADD direct us wherever we need to go because I can't keep my mind on one task. As you will see from what I did from the last couple nights. I haven't been feeling very well, so I tried to come out here last night and knock out as much as I could. So whenever I purchased the truck from my buddy, he had already purchased a brake master and a brake booster. The brake booster was a remand unit, and that remand unit, I guess they just take whatever they can get. So it looks like they sandblasted a really rusty booster, slapped some paint on it, and sent it out. So last night I spent like 2 hours cleaning that thing up and repainting it. Something that's brand new and ready to go, which is crazy. But now that that is done, I can try to get it mounted into the dashboard, hopefully, and we can start making some hard lines. Another thing I want to do this weekend is get the soft lines mounted to the front end in some fashion to where hard lines can run to those. I would like to get the brake distribution block mounted so I can get some hard lines ran to those. So that's going to be the initial start of the weekend. Last night I went through and pulled all of the wire loom off of the entire harness. The harness from the factory runs across this direction. It runs to headlights, horns, fan, the distributor, and all of this from this general direction. I'm not doing any of that because if you've followed along for the previous videos, the truck has been tucked, not as far as, let's say not as far as some Volkswagen guys go or some Honda guys go, which I've had Hondas in the past and I've wire tucked them to where the only thing you saw was just a little bit of spark plug wire. But I'm trying to just clean it up as much as possible. I'm not going to the extent where there's not a single wire seen, but the harness will be tucked. So basically the harness will come through here, and just this side of it will have headlights, the horn, and all that stuff. Half of that harness will be split and come through behind the engine and get the engine all wired in. All of the aftermarket stuff that will be added for the fans and whatnot will be ran through this side. So here and there, I'm going to chip away at that. I get really bored messing with wiring. I don't mind wiring, it's so time consuming and so boring to just sit there and solder and splice and solder and splice. So just like everything else that I do, I gotta chip away at it because ADD and whatnot, easily get distracted. I'll be over here messing with the wiring, something shiny will catch the corner of my eye, and then I just stray away, and then I end up cleaning the corner of the garage for 2 hours, and then the projects take forever to get done. So that's what we're doing. We're just doing our thing and bouncing around. I have a little bit of welding to do on that header still because I kind of screwed myself and welded myself into a corner that I can't really reach. So hopefully I can get that figured out. I think I've convinced myself, and James has convinced me to finally get that done so I can get the exhaust mounted and then make the exhaust mounts and then weld the muffler on, and you know, just the long list of things that come along with that. But I still have to finish the floor, and yeah, there's a lot of things I gotta do. ADD really holds me back sometimes, but it also makes the videos maybe a little bit more interesting. So if you haven't been here before, expect some rambling, expect some straying away, because that's what I do. So we're gonna mess with the brakes, we're gonna mess with the wiring, we're gonna do whatever comes to mind. we might get a third of the way through the brakes and then just veer off into... That's probably what's actually going to happen. We're just going to veer off into just something completely different. So, yeah, if you've never been here before, subscribe. Go check out the other videos. They're pretty much all like this. Yeah, let's get to work. We'll stop rambling. Try and keep the rambling to a minimum on this one. I'll show y'all what I'm going to do that I actually recorded earlier because I forgot to record an intro first. And I don't know. Recording intros in front of people is really strange. Recording anything in front of anybody is really strange. Very hard to get used to talking to a plastic box if you've never done it before. So yeah, let's just do stuff. One thing that I would like to do at some point between today and tomorrow, which apparently I need like, I don't know, a couple hours of alone time with this thing to come back to it and monitor it. So I'm not sure if I'll do this tonight or probably tomorrow morning sometime if I actually wake up early enough to do it. It is fuel tank sealer. So if you watched any of this jungle gym being built, I notched the fuel tank to go around one of my bars. It's a brand new fuel tank. So fuel tanks sweat inside. They will actually create basically condensation like the side of a drink. Cold fuel, hot air, mixing, sweating stuff happens. So my patch, because if you've ever welded anything at ground and then welded something and then set it outside, the weld will always rust first. It's crazy how the moisture attacks the weld first. I don't understand. I'm not I don't know. There's a reason I'm a mechanic, so I don't understand. Regardless, I want to seal this thing up. It doesn't really look like there's much of a sealer in this thing from the factory. This is a eBay tank for like $100. So since I did this, we're going to use this. I've never used this before. Hopefully it's okay. This is like $20 or something off of Amazon. So we're going to attempt to seal the gas tank up. And apparently you can use this stuff on rusty old crappy gas tanks too. So we're going to do this hopefully at some point tomorrow. GoPro, stop recording. So James and I are over here basically just bench racing, trying to figure out what to do. It's like, I don't know, 6 o'clock on a Saturday.
It is 6:19.
6:19 on Saturday, and no progress has been made on the Mazda yet. We went and looked at a Mazda today on Marketplace, and that didn't turn out very well. So we wasted, like, I don't know, a couple hours doing that because of traffic and whatnot. And then we came back, and both of us have been sick, and yeah, you know, just things happened. But we're in the garage going back and forth about this brake line. I've been texting my buddy Sean about his opinions on this, and it's very strange. So I have drop spindles. Whenever you have drop spindles on a Mazda, it changes the path of where the brake line is supposed to go. On a Mazda, the brake line is supposed to go underneath the control arm towards the front of the truck. With a drop spindle, the spindle's in the way, and there's no mounting spot for that because there's supposed to be a mount on the bottom of the control arm, and basically all of that would just run into the drop spindle. So factory, there would be a little bracket right here, but with that bracket there, with the drop spindle in place, that doesn't really work because normally this would be 2 inches higher, and this line would pass through here, and there would be plenty of room for everything to happen, and it wouldn't be touching that because everything would be higher. So we're trying to figure out locations of everything. And the thing that we came up with that doesn't interfere with anything is basically a little bracket that comes off the side of the control arm, which I'm not too excited about it, but my choices are kind of limited here. So I'm going to build a bracket here, I'm going to come out here and build a bracket off of my shock tab and mount the other side off the side of the shock tab. Need to remove the shock because I need to cut the bottom portion of the shock off anyway. I'm going to attempt to work on that. This is actually a stud, so this will be in place of this guy. I made these before the truck belonged to me. I'm not super happy about them. They're not the best looking thing, so those are getting cut off. New things put on. Need to clean up the shocks, and we're just doing stuff. We're trying to find motivation. Hopefully this is the motivation. So yeah, start taking stuff apart.
Like 3 miles from his house to the shop.
Yeah. Alright, so James left. My buddy Tyler came over. He just left. And now we're back on trying to make some progress now that it's like almost 10 o'clock at night. I think I said it was like 6 o'clock earlier when I started making these little tiny tabs. So we haven't gotten very far, and we got a lot of ground to make up. But while they were here, I managed to make a tab for this portion of the brake line, make a tab for that portion of the brake line, and come up with a general direction of where I can put all of this to where there isn't going to be any crazy contact or chafe points at full lock. So it'll be the opposite on the other side. Full lock to the left, full lock to the right. The corner of this will just push this out of the way a little bit. The thing with this truck and it being body dropped, full lock isn't really something that happens. I have drop spindles that are 2 inches, and I have a body drop that's almost 3 inches. So full lock isn't really in the vocabulary of this truck. So I'm not really worried about it barely touching at any point in the suspension travel. I do not believe that that is a concern. I don't think that soft edge would ever rub a hole in the 2 seconds that it would make contact during a turn. Yeah, so mounts are made for the both sides. I'm going to pull that control arm off. I'm going to whip up 2 more mounts. I'll actually show how those ones are made. For the other side, pull that control arm off, sandblast the control arms, weld the stuff on, and then hopefully paint and reassemble all of that. We'll see how long this takes. I'm going to guess at least 2 hours. It is 9:20 right now. Let's see. Just to make sure that when this is on the bench that I put it back in the right spot, I'm just going to drill a hole through both of them. So whenever I do things like this, I try to keep the guys in mind that have never done stuff like this before. So some of this for seasoned car, truck, mini trucker builder guys. This is maybe standard information, I don't know. But for the guys that have never done this before, this would be more pointed towards y'all. So these are factory style little clips, which they're on everything. For years, like I say, 18-year-old me, this bad boy would have got a zip tie and a hole drilled right in the control arm with a zip tie looped around. And eventually the zip tie would have broke and it would probably have gotten pinched. And I probably would have had a nearly taking out some old lady's Volvo or something in traffic after she slams on her brakes in front of me. That's definitely never happened before. But older me, I would say, has had enough near accidents over the years to be wise to my mistakes. So it's worth taking the 15 minutes to make just a little tab. Or I didn't have the factory tabs from this. If I had the tabs, I probably would have just cut them off, cleaned them up, and reused them. So this is just a scrap. Well, this is just a scrap piece of 16 gauge steel. This stuff is, like I said it before, I saved the little pieces because the little pieces come in handy. I can't hold on to anything today. So you have to keep in mind, they have 2 separate tabs. The other one that I dropped on the ground has an eyelet in it. Keep the eyelet in mind when you're making this. Don't make this up, weld it somewhere, and then realize that there's no eyelet because you need to go over the tubing. Again, pretty simple information here. Take your little tabs, they snap on. The other side does not need the eyelet. So these can be made, like, speaking to the guys that are just doing this with basically no tools from the beginning, like, again, 18-year-old me. You can get some Unibits from Harbor Freight for like $8 and some scrap sheet metal. So let's show you that real quick. All right, these are drop-offs from me making other things. Like when I say scrap, I mean literal trash from something else. So, scrap piece, all twisted and mangled up. Unibit. So, we'll just say in place of belt sander, use a grinder. Cut the shape out with the grinder. Cut the end off with the grinder. This is for 18-year-old me. Just take the time to make the little tab and save yourself some headache later on. That's all I'm trying to say. Little tab. You can actually buy these offline too if you don't feel like making them, but they're pretty simple to make. I was out here till 1 o'clock last night, and it didn't go as planned, which it seems like that's pretty normal here lately with this whole project. So I got the arms nice and cleaned up, sandblasted. Just need to pop these guys on the side. So I spoke about the header, and I was going to weld it. I started to weld it, and then I proceeded to weld it for about an hour. And the corner that I welded myself into that I was speaking about, it didn't work out. And that turned into, I don't know why I'm trying to convince myself to make this work when I should just start over. So I started over, and I just cut it. So that's a project for a different day. And I'm gonna make a collector that I actually like, because if you watch the previous videos, I made the header and I made all of the exhaust. The exhaust turned out awesome. I really like the exhaust. I am very happy with the way that worked. It's my first time welding stainless steel and trying to make it look pretty, I guess. And the top portion of the header turned out awesome. And I made a collector, and I wasn't happy with it. And I cut that collector off like a week or two later. And I still wasn't happy with that collector, so I don't know. I come out here and think about what I'm going to do to it all the time, and last night I just hit a point of saying, screw it, and I cut it off. So we're going to get those tabs welded on those arms, get the arms painted. I'm going to try and cut those shocks off of, or shock tabs off of those control arms. When I initially set this truck up, before it belonged to me, it had, these are hard body shocks. These are Nissan hard body front shocks. The shocks that it had on it were the exact same thing, but they didn't have this part. And I used those for mock-up. And then I ordered replacements, and the replacements came with this thing. So they fit, but they were touching just a tiny bit right here. And I didn't take that little sleeve thing into consideration when I was building it, because I didn't have those there to, yeah. So I'm going to cut those little sleeves off. I don't think I'm going to be driving through any crazy, sandy, muddy, I don't know, rough terrains with this thing. So I don't worry about the dirt that would get in there anyway, because this, yeah. So yeah, we're going to cut those off. We're going to cut those lower portions off. We're going to weld some stuff. We're going to paint some stuff. We're going to try to get something done, because so far we're not getting very much done. Before I forget to show y'all how the booster that's been freshly sanded, and which I don't have it bolted in all the way, all of the rust pits removed, turned out with the new master cylinder. It turned out pretty nice, and it helps break up all of the flatness of everything else. So this will sit hopefully in that place. Painted this the same cast as the calipers and the drums and whatnot, because I like cast iron to be cast iron looking, which that's supposed to be cast iron colored, but it's a different brand, so it's a little off. So I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't bug me enough to paint that one day again. Header garbage. It is like 8 o'clock now on Sunday night. It's New Year's, and I'm supposed to be clean and probably heading to my buddy's house by now. So I'll probably end up editing this while we do the whole New Year's thing. So pretty decent progress for the weekend. I know it doesn't really seem like it because it's like, I don't know, it's all super time consuming stuff. Taking stuff apart and painting it and then trying to put it back together in the same day is very time consuming. And I don't have enough garage to take something apart and paint it while I work on something else, because then it would just be me bumping my head into control arms like I did earlier when I came through the door. So I got one side together. We'll talk about the other side first. The other side, got the mount cut off, cleaned up. I heated this up with the torch, caved it in a little bit, and I don't know where that piece went. On the other side, you seen me take this, drill a hole all the way through, and what I was trying to achieve by that was not being able to bolt it on. When I initially bought these, I planned on just cutting that off, welding this thing to here. But the more I thought about it, if I slid this through there, and the very end of it poked out of this side, I plug welded this end to this side of it, and then welded this side completely. So it's actually in there, and it's stout, and it has a good weld all the way around. And then on the other side, cutting this thing off worked out pretty good. And then what you saw me do under here, in the factory, these are torsion bar trucks, and the torsion bar runs from the center to the lower control arm to adjust your height and have your spring. Front, it has these bars. I don't know if you want to call them traction bars or centering bars, but there's a bar that goes from the control arm to the front end of the truck to keep the control arm from bouncing around. I triangulated these control arms a year ago or whatever, so that whole thing is unnecessary. Then after the body drop, the core support comes down and those brackets hang down off the bottom of the frame. So when I went to put the truck on the ground, those brackets were holding the truck up. Cut them with a grinder to get it to where the truck laid out, and I never went back and cleaned them up. So now I just have a rough cut of them closer to the frame. Now I just got to sit under here with a grinder and clean all that up. You saw me fill that gas tank up with that stuff, and holy crap, is that stuff messy. It says just put the whole can there, but I don't know how they judge the can per what size tank you had. Like if you had a small car tank, don't use the whole can, because me using the whole can was too much, and a quarter of it is probably come out of the actual fuel tank itself. And I've been coming over here and rotating it every 10 or so minutes just to get it to flow and hopefully stick. It's almost like once it made its way into the fuel tank, it got thinner, because when I poured it out, it went out kind of heavy, kind of thick. And then the longer it sits here, it seems like it's getting runnier, which I don't understand how that works at all. So I think it's probably going to be it for today. I'll show you all final results of this side. Oh, getting distracted here. The steering shaft had 10 layers of paint. There's at least 3 layers of silver and black, and it looked like blue and green, and you name it, there was one of those colors on there. But it's looking good now. Freshly rebuilt, basically. Got the other control arm ready to go. I got these guys cleaned up the best I could. I think those are the OEM ones because I'm having a hard time finding them with that shape. And they cleaned up well enough to where they look good on there. But final results, This turned out pretty good, I think. You have a nice flow. Nothing's too tight. Nothing's gonna fall off or get caught on anything. The shock's in a good place. I took my air jack, cycled it a few times. Nothing gets bound up or touches, and yeah. It seems like it would touch, but surprisingly it doesn't. So that's all we need. So I'm not sure how long this one was. I feel like it's probably shorter than my normal ones. This week we definitely got to get back on it. Being sick this past week has sucked. I called out of work like 3 times. I never call out of work, especially for 3 days in a row. I was hurting. So we still got progress done. Not as much as I want to. Of course, I would like to be driving it by now. But hopefully next week we can do something exciting. I think I'm gonna wrap up that other suspension side with what we did here, and then I think we're going to wire edge the front fenders. I need some instant gratification. Like, I'd like to put it back on the ground, start fitting body panels on, because now that this is set in place, basically I need to bolt the booster the rest of the way in, start running brake lines. And then after the brake lines are in, the wiring can go in. It's just a long list. And now, added to that list again, even though I scratched it off the list months ago, is header stuff. So it'd be really nice if they just had headers online again, instead of one sketchy website that I don't trust. So yeah, I'm rambling. I'll see y'all next week. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to do all the normal YouTube-y stuff with likes and subscribes and all of those things. And see you next week.